Hello, welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I am your Loremaster, here today for another entry into Loremaster's Library, where we look at the real-life inspirations of your favorite tabletop, specifically puzzle-related topics. Now today, we are looking at a topic we have not spoken about specifically as a video, but have brought up time and time again. The Azlanti Empire. We have made tidbits of the Azlanti, but ironically, I do not think we have enough to actually concisely make a video about them. So instead, the best way of going through this is to go through the real-life inspiration of the Azlanti, the City of Atlantis. And as always, maybe going through you, the viewers, will find something that will inspire you, homebrew-wise. Specifically when it comes to filling out some of the Lost Empire's blank spaces. Anyway, Atlantis starts in a famous story of Plato, as part of his book, The Republic. Emphasis on story. We'll be getting into people who believe that Plato was describing an actual place, but Atlantis appears in one of a series of allegories created by the great philosopher to teach a moral lesson. This was just one people took for a real place. That I know about off the top of my head, of course. There's probably more. In the story, when the deities were given different regions of the world to rule, Poseidon was given domain of Atlantis, an island/continent which was originally outside the Strait of Gibraltar. Which, another random geography lesson, the strait is the part where the Mediterranean Sea meets the Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to do that a lot to this video, just Atlantic Ocean, with the southernmost point of Spain and the northernmost point of Morocco, these known as the Pillars of Hercules, being where the division is. Anyway, Atlantis was described as an island covered in mountains. The centermost mountain was carved into a castle, and there were major waterways which served as moats, 3 huge lakes which circled around the center and separated it from the shore. Canals were used to take one from the outside seas through the moats into the all the way into the center. Eventually, Atlantis and all other nations of the Mediterranean went to war. Atlantis conquered most nations, but was eventually defeated by Athens, and, losing favor of the gods, the island was sunk. Now it should be noted that this story was written to show the superiority of Athens and its governmental system of democracy over the monarchist and authoritarian styles of hypothetical Atlantis. But as you can already guess, not everyone kept the moral of the story when they spread it. Now, I repeat, Atlantis is entirely fictional. However, that does not mean it was entirely made up. Plato is known to have borrowed his allegories from other places and repackaged them for his own use. This has led scholars to investigate contemporary sources to find if there was any Egyptian records of a similar incident that might have inspired the story. Some think it might be an interpretation of the eruption of the Meonian volcano. Others say it's an interpretation of the Trojan War. Some have put forth, because of the time period Plato set the story, it may refer to the invasion of the Sea People, which is an incredibly interesting story of people of unknown origin invading everywhere in the Mediterranean region at the end of the Bronze Age, somewhere around 1200 BC and 900 BC, which I would love to go into, but I can't today because of time / off topic. Anyway, and let's think, he did completely make the story of himself, inspiring it in part by accounts of Athens' attempted invasion of Sicily, or the destruction of the city of Helike by a tsunami. However, as said, many believed Atlantis was a real place, and began trying to find its location or proof of its existence. Just a generation after Plato, there were Greeks claiming there was Egyptian sources which proved Atlantis' existence, without these sources ever being produced, of course. By Roman times, Celtic sources were added to the alleged mix. When Christians grabbed the story, there was a debate between whether Atlantis was part of history or an example of a dirty heathen myth, as Christians do. Those that believed stated the island was as big as Libya or Asia. 2nd century Christians had a limited idea of the size of Asia. Then comes the modern day with the discovery of the New World, where the theory that this new and exciting place was actually Atlantis, and the Mayans were Atlanteans, or former Atlanteans, whose civilization declined, and now they needed the now superior Europeans to blah blah blah. We know about the nonsense of colonialism. But this also brought about various pseudo-histories, where Europeans just made stuff up and acted like it was history. So Thomas More, inspired by the stories of Atlantis and the New World, wrote his 1516 book, Utopia, which should be mentioned was the first use of that word. It was also strongly on the Reagan that Atlantis was the paragon of society, instead of inferior, like was Plato's original point. And on the other side of the ocean, as racist superiority was growing, pseudo-archaeologists started excavating Mayan ruins and making up fan fiction about the buildings, eventually leading to one Auguste Le Plongeon and his Mu saga, where he stated his findings as proof that he and his wife were connected to Osiris and Isis. Round of applause, round of applause. I'm actually surprised anything useful came at all from this era, honestly. Either way, after a wane in interest, in 1882, American congressman and amateur scientist, which seems to be the same thing nowadays, Ignatius L. Donnelly wrote Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, which stated that Atlantis was the location of the Garden of Eden and was sunk by the Great Flood, which is unfortunately the note modern discussions of Atlantis starts on. Then we have the Theosophical Society and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Look, I have nothing against Theosophy and those who practice it. Well, the practitioners who do not use the recency of the religion to make their own sect of it a cult, that is. And occultism is fun in fiction, with me looking forward to our upcoming Thaumaturge Uprising in Pathfinder next year. But man, real-life occultists are the definition of Chernobyls, who build a mythology around themselves, around half-collected mythologies that they barely understand. Anyway, Blavatsky followed up Donnelly's work with The Secret Doctrine, where she described her idea of root races, a sort of spiritual evolution, which had Atlantis as a metaphor for the fourth, and the current humans were the fifth, the Aryan race. Yeah, we know where this is going. The Nazis took in any ideology which stroked their fragile egos, and that included occultism. Before, they turned around and sent occultists to concentration camps, along with the Jewish, the Roma, people with birth defects, people who needed glasses, people who were left-handed. Yeah, people forget just how many different people the Nazis killed. Anyway, they borrowed the ideas of Aryanism and claimed to be direct descendants of Atlanteans, missing the fact that Madame Blavatsky's claimed descendants of the Atlanteans were Native Americans, Mongols, and Malayans. Malayans is the word. Which I should also mention. These three groups genetically do not have any more to do with a common ancestry with each other than they do with Africans or Europeans. Basically, we are dealing with fan fiction being plagiarized to justify killing children. And people wonder why archaeologists and history majors hate the Victorian era. In modern times, specifically the 1960s, proof of plate tectonics gave proof to continental shift, and with it, proof that a sunken continent could not have existed. Even still, claims still go around about theories of where Atlantis is. Every island in the Mediterranean has been searched as possible remains of Atlantis, and every island in the Atlantic has experienced the same. In 2004, an archaeologist claimed Stone Age Ireland matched the geological description of Atlantis. Some claim parts of Spain show proof of Atlantean civilization. What the heck? Let's throw in the speculations involving the Pacific and Indian Oceans, the examinations of the Caribbean, and the 1974 theory involving Antarctica. In a chase of a legend, people are willing to plant it anywhere. Believe me, I grew up Christian. Anyway, in modern literature, stories of Atlantis and copycats are often used in one of two ways. As an example of a great utopia, as was started in the Renaissance era, or as an example of a great dystopia, this being close in spirit to Plato's original use from his story. Now, before we finish up, let us look at the lost continents, most of them based off Atlantis. Maybe giving you homebrewers out there a way to diversify. Versus Mu, which has become Atlantis, but Pacific Ocean instead of Atlantic. Similarly, we have Lemuria, which is Atlantis, but Indian Ocean. Also in the Indian Ocean, Indian mythology gives us Dwarka, a kingdom sunk into the sea. Then we have Thule, the farthest north island in Greek mythology, adapted as a more Arctic/Scandinavian-inspired Atlantis, and a part of Nazi ideology, but we can ignore them. Swastika stealing Chernobyls, among everything else they did. Ys was a city from Celtic mythology, more in line with stories of Sodom or Gomorrah, but still with the Atlantis sinking style storytelling. Yeah. On the topic of cities, Veneta was a city in the southern Baltic Ocean, which was hospitable, but was sunk due to hubris. In turn, the city of Ketsa in Russian mythology was not sunk as a punishment, but as God's attempt to save them from the Mongols, by drowning all of them. Finally, we have Antediluvian, which is from the Christian belief in the Great Deluge, with this myth stating that the place we live now is different from the place we lived before the flood, which now sits at the bottom of the ocean. And that brings us to the end of our tale of a metaphor, which has lost all meaning as the years have gone on. But which brings us some interesting stories in fiction. Or not. Not everyone is a fan of hashtag perfect places like the Azlanti or Axis. Again, sorry about most of this, well, not again, I haven't stated this, but sorry about this mostly being a complaint video. Some parts of history I feel strongly about, considering how much of an effect they've had on some people's ways of thinking. Either way, tune in next week for the last video of the year, our own Christmas celebration, that I still need to figure out what to do a topic on. Well, see you then.